Good afternoon. How are you? Good. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so my name is Brie Code, and they already introduced me, so I won't again, except I will. This ridiculous picture of myself is my favorite picture of myself because I'm quiet and I'm shy, and I like pink and flowers, and I like to curl up in the corner, but I'm also really, really opinionated. And I've been in the video game industry for about 15 years. Before founding my tiny studio, I worked 7 years at Ubisoft Montreal as a lead programmer on Child of Light and on 3 Assassin's Creed games. Before that, I wrote AI code at Relic Entertainment in Vancouver. So if you've ever played Company of Heroes against the AI, you played against me and my colleague Shelby. And when I started in the games industry, I fell in love with it. I liked writing AI because I liked bringing characters to life. But later, when I started hitting too many glass barriers, I fell out of love with the industry. I stopped caring about things. I stopped trying to make things I care about, and I sidestepped into helping other people make the things that they cared about. And looking back, I can see that more and more as I worked on games I didn't care about, I also grew to detest guitar solos and to love electronic music, and to become annoyed with movies, and to become interested in Netflix TV series, and to lose interest in many games, and to become very interested in art. And I didn't draw a connection between those preferences and feelings until a few years ago. A few years ago, something amazing happened, and I had a realization that radically changed the way that I thought about guitar solos and movies and games, and radically deepened my own understanding of why I play games and what I look for in games. And shortly after that, I quit my job with no plan. Oops, I've done something here. Okay. And shortly after that, I started my studio, True Love, where we're making video games with people who find video games boring, and we're making games about care and connection and transcendence and celebration. And the first game we'll release is made with a magazine editor and artist in Montreal named Eve Thomas, and her game is about self-care. And we're making a game with Alicia Leidecker, who's the interaction director at the new Magic Leap studio in San Francisco, about vulnerability and connection, and we're making a few more. But my studio's games follow directly from this shift in understanding about games and what I look for in games, and that's what this talk is about. And I'll be sharing some pretty ugly and uncomfortable truths in this talk, so let's just take a few deep breaths together first. Take a sip of water if you have some. I'm going to talk about structural systemic racism and sexism and other power imbalances between people. I won't be offended if you leave the room at any point, but do be reassured that this is an inspirational talk. I don't believe in positive thinking as a source of inspiration. I do believe in looking deep into the abyss, in taking responsibility for what we've done as an industry and a society, and in finding ways forward that work and that are better. And despite everything, I'm extremely optimistic about the future. So, I love video games, but most of my friends find video games boring. Everywhere I go, I meet people who aren't interested in video games. My favorite thing at a dinner party or on a Tinder date is to watch the other person squirm and struggle to relate when I mention that I work in games. They'll bring up some old game they used to play, try to talk about it, and then confess that they don't care about video games. The multitudes of white bro gamers who dominate the games industry have been making experiences that are relevant to them, but not to most people. People who like video games come to work in the video game industry, and then they continue to make what they like, and that's a closed loop. And it makes sense, but it's boring. And it's a missed opportunity. It's so many missed opportunities, but we can take those opportunities. When you work only with experts and with people similar to yourself, you tend to get stuck in what's called a local maximum. People who are similar to each other think similarly. You draw on the same knowledge base and you approach problems from the same angles. And underneath that, in groups of similar people, there's a further psychological pressure to conform to the stereotype of the group. This is unconscious, you don't know you're doing it, but the result of this pressure is that you yourself will have fewer good ideas when you're in a group of people who are similar to yourself than you yourself would have in a group of people who are different. And study after study shows that diverse groups are better at innovation than expert groups. This holds true from individual teams in psych labs to individual teams within corporations to overall corporate performance. But when you don't have different people, you don't have innovative ideas. You refine your own solution to a problem and make it better and better, but you don't discover radically different solutions that would be radically better. People buy products to solve problems in their lives. People turn to entertainment to solve problems in their lives, and life is really difficult. Our world is shocking. The very wealthy are becoming wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. The weather is turning more and more unfamiliar. Our jobs are disappearing or weren't there in the first place. The internet is enabling the most vile swarms of voices to shout their white supremacy and misogyny and other hatred at vulnerable individuals. Our national governments seem unwilling or at best powerless to address any of these new global issues, and at worst are leveraging them to create ignorant fear and short-term power gains. We're checking our phones compulsively with horrified fascination. For years now, we've been more and more overwhelmed with shock. From advertising, from entertainment, from social media, from the news media, from world events, from addictive mobile games. My friends are vibrating with overstimulation and uncertainty. My friends are not looking for shooty, fighty games or frustrating games or anything like this. They're looking for relief, to take care and be taken care of. On the surface, care means that they don't want to be insulted. They don't want to see damaging stereotypes of their identities in the entertainment that they turn to for relief. And they do want to see references to culture that they understand and like. They want to know that they're a welcome audience. And then underneath that, they want experiences in which they grow, experiences in which they learn and change as a person. They want experiences in which they can explore who they are and how they want to relate to the world. Video games that show care to their players, that give opportunities for performing care, would be more culturally relevant to more people. And I don't think that it is only for cultural reasons that my friends want to care. I think there's a physiological reason, and I think it has something to do with stress reactions. I think it has something to do with a stress reaction that many of us have, but that has been historically ignored in a research community that has been designed largely for and by one kind of person. And I think this holds the key to the future of a games industry that I could fall in love with again. When you're playing a video game and there are a lot of things flashing on the screen and there's danger and it's shocking and it's fun, that's a fight or flight response to stress. Sorry, just a second. With fight or flight, when you experience a threat, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in and releases adrenaline, followed by dopamine. If you like games like this, it's probably because adrenaline and dopamine are very enjoyable. Your pupils dilate, your heart beats faster, your airways open up, and you feel exhilarated. You feel alive, you feel powerful, and you have fun. But not everyone likes these kind of games. I never have. My friends don't. My Tinder dates don't. People I talk to at bus stops don't. And I think my friends find games like this boring, not only because they aren't interested in more stories about grizzled anti-heroes, and not only because they don't know how the controls work or don't get the references to culture that they don't care about, but also because they don't get an adrenaline high. They have a different response to stress. So this is my cousin Christina, and she's one of my friends who finds video games boring. What she loves instead are contemporary feminist art, vegan food, and longboarding with her friends. And Christina has never understood why I work in games. In fact, of all my friends, she's been maybe the most hostile towards my affection for video games. She's always seen me as a designer, but not a game designer. Whenever I would message her freaking out about work, she wouldn't offer her support. Instead, she'd encourage me to quit and go back to school to study interior design or industrial design or something like this. She thought I was wasting my life in the video game industry, and from what she could see, I was. And then a few years ago, Christina's husband's brother bought a PS4 and gave her his old PS3. I recommended that she play my favorite game, Skyrim, and I didn't expect her to actually play it because she's so uninterested in games. And I didn't hear from her for 3 weeks, and I thought she didn't play it. And then one evening she called me crying because she'd accidentally killed Lydia. Christina finds video games boring, but for a few weeks she loved Skyrim. She isn't interested at all in medieval warfare or swords or dragons, and she found the controls confusing. She doesn't like anything to do with fighting. She doesn't like feeling frustrated, and she doesn't like feeling attacked. But she loved Skyrim because she loved the characters. She loved creating her character, doing quests for other characters, joining guilds, and bringing Lydia along on her adventures. She liked experimenting with who she is in a social context of characters whom she cares about and who care about her. After a long day of office politics and being catcalled in the street and seeing Trump's face all over TV and experiencing all the other daily hostility in the world, Christina doesn't like being attacked in a game, but she loves taking care. She said to me that it turns out that after all these years, it wasn't that she didn't like video games, it was that she didn't know what video games could be. Christina doesn't like adrenaline, and neither do I, but with Skyrim, there's something similar to fight or flight, but very different than fight or flight that is probably going on with us, and it's called tend-and-befriend. Like fight or flight, tend-and-befriend is an automatic, physiological reaction to threat. It's not learned, it's instinctual and immediate. If you experience tend-and-befriend, it's because your body releases oxytocin or perhaps vasopressin when you're stressed, followed by opioids. This calms your sympathetic nervous system so you don't get the flood of adrenaline. Instead of wanting to fight or to flee, you stay relatively calm but aware. Your pupils dilate, you become fearless, and you're less sensitive to pain. You instinctively and immediately want to protect your loved ones, to seek out your allies, and to form new alliances. This is how you feel when you're with your gang. Oxytocin intensifies social feelings, and opioids feel extremely warm and lovely. I don't care for adrenaline, but I really, really like this. This feels delicious, luscious, and powerful. Once I was with 2 friends halfway into a hike in Canada when I heard a very loud roar. I looked up the hill and I saw a grizzly bear bigger than the SUV that we'd left at the trailhead, and I froze, and everything went into slow motion, and I became aware of every detail of the forest around me. As I watched, it roared again. We turned and we walked calmly out of the trail. I remember how that walk felt, smooth and shiny, and everything was in slow motion. And then I turned a corner, and right in my face was a little white owl. The owl looked at me and I looked at it. Our eyes were level, and it blinked and I blinked, and then it spread its wings and flew away, and I kept walking. And that moment felt very spiritual and powerful and warm, like falling in love. And I'll never forget that moment, but I know now that that connection was all in my head. That was oxytocin and that was opioids. I mean, unless the owl was having the same stress reaction that I was. But a very interesting thing about tend and befriend is that this oxytocin opioid thing isn't only caused by stress. Unlike fight or flight, there are many other less threatening, less harmful ways to experience this. Oxytocin is there when you touch or even think about someone you love. It's very much there during sex. It's there when you play fetch with your dog or chill out with your cat. It's there when you look at a cute baby. It's there when you watch cute animal videos on the internet. And even more interestingly, it's there when you exclude someone that you don't like. So maybe if I'd had a really great day with my friends that day hiking, if we'd laughed and shared wisdom and had big realizations and maybe a little bit of champagne, and then I ran into that owl in the same way, I may have felt the same connection. I didn't really need the bear. When I first read about tend-and-befriend, I suddenly understood myself so much better. I thought, oh shit, this is how I usually react to stress. It's how I usually react to most things. And it's not just me and it's not just my friends. When people are stressed, we do tend to affiliate more often than to start a brawl. It seems that many people have the tend-and-befriend reaction, many people, many women and many men. It's possible that this could be our dominant stress response in general, and this gives me hope, because have you heard of tend-and-befriend before? Maybe not. It's barely been studied, it's barely been discussed, it's barely just been identified. In 1998, some researchers at the UCLA Social Neuroscience Lab were attending a talk by a prominent stress researcher in which he said, just kind of offhand as part of his presentation, we shocked the animals, and of course they all attacked each other. And this statement struck those researchers from UCLA as obviously not descriptive of humans. Obviously not descriptive of humans. That's not what we do in earthquakes or ice storms, etc. We tend to react in the moment by either doing nothing or by helping each other. So this team at UCLA looked into it, and by 2000, Dr. Shelley E. Taylor and her colleagues had identified the tend-and-befriend response in this paper. But why so late? Why not until 2000 did we find out something so fundamental to who we are? The answer is blinkered researchers and their bad samples. Like much other research in many other fields, most stress research had been done with animals, male rats. Prior to 1995, only about 17% of stress research on humans had been done with women. There's certainly no nuance given to the spectrums of gender identity, gender expression, and sex in this paradigm. Across many fields, when the data from women or from female animals don't fit, the researchers blame menstruation, throw the female data out of the sample, and keep going, studying male rats, and more male rats. And that's exactly what happened in stress research. I'm not kidding. In addition to ignoring women, femininity, and femaleness, most researchers don't break outside of studying what is known as the weird sample: white, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. The majority of scientists have been studying Western university students. This is in no way a comprehensive or generalizable sample. Most researchers also belong to the weird sample. When you work only with people similar to yourself, you tend to get stuck in a local maximum. I was taught in school that fight or flight was my stress response, was all of our stress responses, but it's not. And it's not only stress research that skews weird and skews male. It's a lot of research. It's a lot of design. It's a lot of researchers and a lot of designers. For those of us who aren't white, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic, cisgender men, it's possible many things we've been taught about ourselves are just wrong. Many things we think we know about ourselves are just wrong. %80 of drug studies that are done in mice are done with male mice only. In neuroscience, studies of male animals outnumber studies of female animals by 11 to 2. 70% of pain patients are women, but 80% of pain studies use only male rodents. Until 2009, no one knew the shape of the clitoris. We see these kind of oversights in the diagnostic criteria for many things, including ADHD and Asperger's. We see it in the typical symptoms for heart attacks, and this means that for young people who have heart attacks, young women are twice as likely to die as young men. My friend's mother this year nearly lost her life because her heart attack symptoms weren't taken seriously. We also see these kind of problems in the design of cities and homes and hospitality. We see it in the generally accepted room temperature for public spaces. Does your shower have a place to put your foot so you can shave your legs? Because mine doesn't, and I've never seen one that does, but that's something that a lot of people do in the shower. How many hotels have you stayed at that offered tampons and pads along with Q-tips and a shoe mitt? Until 2011, we saw oversights like this in the design of crash test dummies, and from there in the design of airbags. So then we had dangerous airbags. Tremendous oversights were made about skin color in the design of color film and continue to be made in the design of face tracking and eye tracking software. What mainstream cosmetics companies carry enough shades of foundation for medium and dark skin tones, even the ones that claim that that's what they're about? The default sizes for phones and for VR hardware tend to be based on the sizes of the hands and bodies of the people making them and not on a range of hand and body sizes. What video games have good hair options for everyone? Guitar solos are a typical male energy. This linear buildup of tension followed by one climax and a denouement. This is the structure of most Western forms of entertainment, and it annoys me. It doesn't resonate with me. It's not my pattern. I notice that I always get annoyed when the plot kicks in a movie, the predictable conflict and buildup of misunderstandings followed by the predictable climax and the end. I just want to get to know the characters and exist in the world for a while. TV series are a bit better for this. The characters are all having their little arcs, and there is more of an ebb and flow to it. But God, where does this end? I don't know how anyone can look at this world with open eyes and think that feminism is done. We're just getting started. Our society was designed by one kind of person, and therefore it was designed for one kind of person. Our systems, our hierarchies, our rules, our roles, our morals. I'm not playing by these rules anymore. These rules are so boring. They expose a failure of imagination and a failure of care. I try to understand how it happens. I suppose a casual dismissal of other perspectives comes easily when someone has had his own perspectives validated throughout his life. When bodies like his have been studied by science, when bodies like his have been designed for, when characters like him are all over film and television and video games and the news and politics and corporate boards, when his confidence has been repeatedly interpreted as competence, and when his bosses and mentors see themselves in him and make space for him. But I think it must be much more than a failure of imagination, much more than a failure of care, much more than cluelessness, or we wouldn't still be here after so many years of fighting for change. I think some of it must be based in fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of loss of status, fear of loss of power, fear of looking at everything feminine about himself that he has repressed and shoved deep down into his shadow self, fear of becoming whole, fear of growing up. But neither cluelessness nor fear leads us to a bright future. Neither cluelessness nor fear leads us to good ideas. Neither cluelessness nor fear are good for the long-term health or status or power of any industry. Our lives are not a zero-sum game. To grow the industry, we must grow it for everyone. Yet, a prominent games researcher told me once that he too doesn't try to study women because, in his words, you can't predict women. This statement strikes me as obviously not descriptive of women. Obviously not descriptive of women. I was horrified at the time because I didn't have enough power yet to go around him and people like him. A technical director on a AAA screamed in my face once that he hates feminists and that I don't belong in the games industry. I was disgusted. I didn't really know him. We didn't work together. I wondered where his fear came from. Meanwhile, I've watched multiple teams searching for new kinds of gameplay that doesn't depend on guns, without thinking outside of recreating the same natural and quite rightly beloved adrenaline high. They're missing some data. They're missing some perspectives. They could ask more people. At one point, a boss of mine declared in the face of focus groups and research proving otherwise that my target market craves only Vogue magazine and not also deep character systems. At this point, I realized I wasn't interested in trying to explain this basic shit anymore. I couldn't exist in a place where I had to explain my humanity. I like Vogue magazine and interesting characters, so I made my own studio. Since then, I've heard many times that women only like match 3. I've heard that there is no room for innovation left in mobile games. I've heard that this insight about shock and care in video games was more about my own personal psychology than any generalized trend. I've heard that I shouldn't mention anything to do with gender bias in my talks because it turns people off from hearing the message. It's not rare that I have these reactions when I recount this research and these experiences. Large groups of potential customers have been ignored by an industry that seems either too clueless or too scared or too lazy or at best too risk-averse or too complex to be able to look outside itself. A woman I very much respect, though, told me that you can't change the world, but you can make your little corner of it better. I've found my little corner. It shouldn't be flashing. Is it going to give anyone a seizure? Okay. I found my little corner. It's kind of driving me a bit crazy, but I'm bored of patriarchy and its lasting effects on my life, on all of our lives. But I'm very interested in looking at the gaps in game design and fixing them. I'm so interested in this. This is the most engaging work I've ever done. We can do this. We can do the right thing. We can tear down a field of game design that was built by one kind of person and build it back up for everyone. We are tearing it down and building it back up. As I worked more and more on games built on theories that don't describe me, my distaste for guitar solos and simple linear narratives grew. And that distaste was a gift from my subconscious in reaction to my work environment that led me to start questioning the narrative and design ideas we were taking for granted, and eventually led me to discover the tend-and-befriend research. Learning about tend-and-befriend helped me understand not just how I react to stress, but to most things, and why I can be overly compassionate and overly petty, and other things both good and bad. It gave me perspective on my life and who I am, and it gave me new strategies for how to develop some of my strengths and how to alleviate some of my struggles. It helped me understand how toxically masculine our society still is. It helped me understand how even though I grew up with feminism, the world still hasn't changed enough that I fit in it. It helped me understand how Gamergate happened. It helped me understand why I didn't like working in a corporate structure. It helped me understand how much work there really is to do. It helped me understand that I exist the way that I exist. I won't spend any more energy changing myself to fit into these masculine structures. I can acknowledge what works for me and what doesn't, and I can fight to change what doesn't. And these insights are what I want from entertainment. I want a safe space where I can explore who I am and what my life is, where I can gain understanding of myself and my life and the people around me and the world. I understand now why I got bored of games and guitar solos and even movies. Those simple conflicts don't stimulate me. And I understand now why I have loved the games that I have loved. All my life, from the Colonel's Bequest through to the weird way that I played Warcraft and Starcraft, through to The Sims and The Longest Journey, through to Morrowind and Skyrim and Neko Atsume and Kim Kardashian Hollywood and many others. What I've always done with games is tend and befriend. In these games, I've made spaces for myself where I can care and where I can relate and where I can grow. And then I can bring those lessons back into my corner of the world and make it better. I don't have to like shooters to like the possibilities that exist in interactive entertainment. I just have to make different games. I don't have to change myself to fit a corporate structure designed for businessmen with wives at home. I just have to freelance, and I have to build a company that supports a different model of work. I don't have to ask powerful, uninformed men to validate my ideas and fund my projects. I just have to start small and communicate well with my audience and make what they like and build it up from there. So then, what is game design missing? What would Christina play? I ask this question not just in terms of cultural elements, which are important, not just in terms of diverse protagonists, which are important, not just in terms of references beyond Tolkien fantasy and science fiction and modern-day warfare and nostalgic pixel art. I ask this question in terms of game mechanics and game systems. I ask in terms of adrenaline, dopamine, oxytocin, opioids, and other reward systems. What does it take to induce a flow state in the player? Does it always require frustration? And beyond these immediate rewards, I ask in terms of what is missing from what we think we know about player psychology, about play styles, about player motivation. I ask in terms of what personality psychology and social psychology and positive psychology and other reward frameworks could tell us about new, more constructive and deeper ways to reward players. If you are lucky enough to not fit the game developer stereotype, then start questioning game design by looking into your own heart. Maybe everything we know is wrong, but you are right. Admit to yourself what you like and what you don't like, no matter what your community says. Make the games you want to play. And all of us, we can start by talking with more people. We can start by playtesting ideas early and often with different people and not condescending to them. Make sure your playtesters are comfortable and safe, and then see what they say and don't dismiss them. Ask your target customers what they do for fun outside of games. Ask them why. Ask them what they're curious about in life and ask them why. Ask them what stresses them and why. Ask them what they do to manage stress and why. Ask them what they wish they could fix about their lives and why, and ask why again, and brainstorm together with them to see if interactivity could provide any solutions. And I want to be very clear that care is not weak or simple or cute. It doesn't only belong in simple or cute games. Care is growing up. Care is taking responsibility and seizing opportunity. Audre Lorde famously said, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." Likewise, caring for your chosen loved ones and forming new alliances are also acts of warfare. The morality of both care and violence depend on who I choose to care for and who I choose to fight. Care is not always ethical. Violence is not always unethical. And just as it requires bravery to use violence for good, it requires bravery to speak up, to reach out, and to build together towards something new. Care can be stronger than brutality or fear. Are you strong enough to change the industry? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not, but together we certainly can be. Because I'm not convinced that this little corner of the world is so little after all. The entertainment we consume is the framework through which we understand the world. It's how our unconscious biases are built. It's where we find role models. It's where we explore our options. It's how we connect with each other. Entertainment is culture, and culture is power. Storytelling is power. And a video game industry that has focused only on one thing has had ramifications, very ugly ramifications in society. As an industry, we have a role in toxic tech bro culture and in Gamergate and its subsequent anti-feminist, white supremacist cesspools on the internet and in our streets and in our ballot boxes. But a video game industry that focuses on many and more constructive avenues can have many and more constructive results. For video games to become the interesting, influential force we know they can be, that some of us think they already are, we must take that responsibility. We can take that opportunity. We influence people's lives. Storytelling is power, and that power is ours. Take it. Use this power to build an inclusive and robust and relevant and just future. Fight, critique, strategize. Make the games that you want to play. Create the worlds that you want to live in. Tell the stories that you truly want to live. That's an industry I would want to work in, an industry I could love. This is a world I would want to live in. Who knows? Maybe we're here to take away the boys' games after all. Thank you.